What steps are you taking to keep Londoners safe and support the ongoing reform of the Metropolitan Police Service? The Mayor of London.
Thank you, Chair. Keeping Londoners safe and bearing down on crime will always be my top priority as Mayor. Can I begin by thanking the tens of thousands of police officers and staff who on a daily basis work hard to keep London safe. I'm determined that we continue to be both tough on crime and tough on the complex causes of crime. As part of this, I'm providing record funding for the police from City Hall. My final budget this year included a £1.16 billion annual investment in the police, more than double than the previous mayor. This funding is helping to protect neighbourhood policing in our communities and is ensuring that the Met can take tough action on crimes like shoplifting and phone theft. This includes, for example, increasing the police presence in hotspot areas in the West End by 50%. As Mayor, I'll continue to invest record amounts from City Hall in the police, but we know we'll never be able to simply arrest our way out of the problem, particularly youth violence. Without in any way excusing violent crime, the causes are extremely complex and involve deep-seated issues, including poverty, inequality, and lack of opportunities for young people. That's why I'll continue to provide positive opportunities for young Londoners, fund activities for children during the school holidays, and support our violence reduction unit, which is working to prevent crime. Our funding so far has helped to create more than 500,000 positive opportunities to divert vulnerable young Londoners away from criminal gangs and crime and towards training and employment. The good news is that we know our approach is working. Despite our population rising by more than 1 million and austerity from the previous government, since 2016, violence with injury is down by 14%, homicide is down by 22%, burglary is down by 29%, a reduction of nearly 20,000 offences. Gun crime with a lethal barrel discharge is down by nearly 50%. And compared to last year, knife crime is down by 18%, personal robbery is down by 13%, and theft from the person is down by 16%. In addition, the number of murders in the capital in the first 9 months of this year was the lowest since monthly records began and represents a fall of 58% compared to 2003. We've all seen how some politicians and commentators are desperate to talk London down because it suits their political agenda. Of course, we still have a long way to go and we must never be complacent. But the truth is, we're making progress in London, and according to the ONS, you're less likely to be a victim of violent crime in our capital than across the rest of England and Wales. After 14 years of cuts by the previous government, the funding landscape for the Met remains challenging. The new government has already increased police funding, and I'll continue to make the case for the additional investment the Met desperately needs. I want to finish, Chair, by talking about police reform, which remains a key priority for me. Whilst the Met has taken significant action since the Casey review, the appalling footage in the recent BBC documentary shows how much further the Met still has to go. As Mayor, can continue to support and hold the Met to account to ensure the necessary reforms are put in place and that Londoners have the police service they deserve. Thank you, Chair. I look forward to answering your questions during this afternoon. I'll now hand over to Sir Mark, the Commissioner.
Thank you, Chair. Just a couple of points to add to the Mayor's opening comments. I'm at a moment of reflection as we've been launching over the last few weeks the second phase of our new Met for London plans. As we've been going around all 32 boroughs in London, I was in Islington a couple of nights ago, so we're about halfway through those 32, of which I'm doing about half the events myself. The reaction and the conversations with communities feel different. The stories that my local officers on neighbourhood teams on each of those boroughs feels different, and they're much closer to local communities fighting the crimes that matter to them. I'm proud of what they're achieving in a smaller organisation where they're managing to be more productive and achieve more. The Mayor has gone through some of the facts and figures, so I won't repeat them. But starting at that neighbourhood level, we're now arresting 1,000 people more a month in a smaller organisation. That's more than 10% increase where we were about 18 months ago. That is helping to drive down crime, the sort of reductions in robbery, theft from person, burglary, etc. that are the points the Mayor made. If we then sort of step into violence against women and girls, our outcome rates, the cases we're solving, is 2 or 3 times what it was a couple of years ago, and we've gone from being one of the poorest performing forces in the country to one of the better ones. There's still obviously a long way to go. Those are a consequence of, even in a smaller organisation, we have tipped resources towards what matters most to the public, and we've gone from having 3,300 officers and PCSOs in neighbourhoods to 4,300, so an increase by 1,000, and we've increased by nearly 600 the number of officers in violence against women and girls. The point about productivity is interesting. So that increase in the resources to deal with violence against women and girls is about 20%, and yet they've more than doubled the proportion of cases solved. So that's sort of illustrative of the outstanding work they're doing. And on top of that, the sort of continuing falling violence is, I think, really powerful and sort of lays waste to the idea London is a dangerous place. You're less likely to be injured in assault in London than you are in Birmingham, Manchester or Leeds. Our murder rates are at record lows. Murder in London is lower than Paris, Brussels, Berlin. It's lower than every US state. It's lower than Toronto. London is a safe place. But there is, of course, more to do, and that's what we're working on in New Met London too. Despite the bearing down on standards and sort of sadly having to remove 1,500 people in the last 3 years, which is creating a much better environment, and that stands on the shoulders of all the good officers who care about the Met and reporting colleagues for disgraceful behaviour. There's more to do. I think the Panorama programme showed that with, as they described it, the sort of those who are more determined to behave in disgraceful ways are hunkering down, are going underground, and we're going after them. Operations sort of more recently that are finally worth mentioning. I think Operation Zoridon, the organised crime behind shoplifting, which you see in corner shops, reselling goods stolen from mainstream shops. We've closed down several shops across London on that and starting to break down the organised crime behind shoplifting, whilst we double the number of shoplifters we're prosecuting this year. Operation Echo Steep, that big anti-mobile phone theft operation at all tiers, from street theft all the way to international organised crime, where the one group we believe were exporting 40,000 stolen phones a year from London and are now charged with various organised crime offences. And sort of many other such operations are helping make progress day in and day out for Londoners. Thank you.
Okay, so the first Assembly member I'm going to call is Assembly Member Wilson.
Thank you, Chair. My questions will be to the Commissioner, please, this morning, if that's okay. So I'd like to begin by noting that in the last 2 years, the Jewish population in London has been subjected to a steady increase, perhaps even a rising tide, of anti-Semitic abuse. And many Jews that speak to me are intensely critical of the Met's failure to take action on those who chant particular chants. In particular, one that springs to mind is "From the River to the Sea," which they believe has signalled to the anti-Jewish hate mob that there are no consequences for this behaviour. And similarly, as we had at a previous exchange with the Mayor, his refusal to acknowledge that this chant, which is a direct call for the destruction of the world's only Jewish state, as being virulently anti-Semitic. But don't just take it from me. Lord Walney, the government's former advisor on political violence and disruption, who has spoken in this very chamber, agrees that this is a chant soaked in anti-Semitism, and it should be made completely unacceptable, not excused. Anyone who thinks it's okay for people to chant that hateful phrase needs to consider what it is calling for Palestine to be free from. They mean free from Jews. So, as I said, an overwhelming majority of British Jews, including those in London that I speak to regularly, know what this chant means. It means kill all the Jews. And earlier this week, when I met Israelis whose friends and family have experienced firsthand exactly what it meant on October the 7th to them, they share those views. So given the experience of the past 2 years, Sir Mark, do you regret the Met Police not taking stronger action against this particular chant?
Thank you. Thank you for the question. So, firstly, the effect of the 7th of October terrorist attack in Israel and the follow-on military action and all the death and destruction we've seen in the Middle East over a substantial period, you see it playing out on the streets of London because of us being such a sort of globally connected city. Hate crime has risen for Jews and for Muslims over that period, most significantly for Jews, as you say. after an initial surge up. It is lower than it was in the months after October 7th, but it is still higher than it was and still at worryingly high rates. We've put an immense amount of extra resources into following up on the hate crime and investigating it, and anything that is prosecutable we will do. At particularly intense times, we've also put extra patrols in Jewish communities, and we'll continue to do that, because every community in London should feel equally able to thrive and equally safe. And I can see that Jewish communities feel shaken, and that's completely understandable. When it comes to public order legislation, we've used the powers available to us under the law to greater effect, with greater assertiveness than we ever have done before. We've put more conditions on protests, we've made more arrests at protests for public order offences, hate crime offences, terrorist offences than ever before. But we operate under the law. There are a range of opinions about what different phrases means. Everything that is marginal and contentious, we have tested with CPS, we've tested with lawyers, that is it something that is prosecutable? And we are prosecuting everything that CPS are prepared to prosecute. That's not said in the sense of criticising them, that's just in terms of their judgment as the law officers they are. And so we're using the law as robustly as possible. If Parliament wants to change the balance in terms of what's allowed in protest, what's allowed in language, that's a matter of Parliament. Policing polices without fear or favour, and we do that as robustly as we can do, taking full account of the impact on protest and language on communities.